So I am Jeannette B Taylor. I am an alderwoman of the 20th Ward in Chicago, Illinois, and I'm a Democratic Socialist of America. This election was quite different because it not only pushed the conversation to the left. The 6 Democratic Socialists of America members who made it to City Council are all organizers. And so this was work in a long time coming. So we've worked years fighting capitalism and racism in Chicago, in the United States. And through a few losses for candidates that we ran other years, we finally organized enough folks, did enough door knocking, and won city council seats. So the neighborhood that I represent is 75% African American, 20% Latino, and other. It's a low income and working family neighborhood. The median income in my community is $24,000. The last 3 aldermen in this ward have been indicted and went to jail for corruption. And so I have over 1,000 vacant lots in my community, but I'm also in a position to be receiving the Obama Presidential Center. And so my biggest challenge is getting my community to believe that they have a seat at the table, because too often low income and working families do not have a say-so in politics and in legislation in this country. And so for me to be a mother of 5, a wife, my mother was a school clerk, my father was a cab driver, I was a teen mother. And so I was not the candidate that they saw coming, but because I was an organizer, I figured out how to win the race, and now I'm in the position to represent my community. And so it's getting my community clean. It's making sure the community is at the table to decide what comes, what goes. It holds bad business owners accountable. It makes sure that the city doesn't ignore the South and West Side, which historically has happened. If you look on the South and West Sides, the majority of the folks that live in those communities are Black and Latino, and they're ignored, they're starved. We don't own any of the institutions anymore. And I remember as a kid growing up in the 80s, in Black communities, we owned all the institutions. You couldn't go anywhere without seeing a business owner that looked like us. Our schools were represented by us. And that's not what you see now, because they've privatized a lot of the systems that are supposed to serve us, and 90% of the time mistreat us. And so we're at a critical time where we have a president who is okay with locking up families in detention centers, but we know politics is also local. And so we have an opportunity to make these communities great for everybody. So a smart elected official looks at this as an organizer. I'm not a politician. I will never be. I organize around what the people in my community want to see. And so that's the most difficult part, because we don't believe we can win in Black and brown communities, because historically we haven't. And so for me, it's organizing my community, seeing what they need. The same way that I knock doors to ask them for their vote is the same way that I knock doors to say, what do you want to see in your community? What is it that we should be doing? How do we recycle wealth in our own communities? And so that's the challenge, is getting people to come to the table. And so I'm smart enough as an organizer to have 2 spaces. So this office is an office where we run the business of the city. The other side is the space for the community. Why? Because the community is paying for this space through their taxes. And so they have every right to have access to it. And so I don't see myself any better or any different than the people that I'm representing. And so when you think of it like that, you can do good work. And so I've only been in this seat since May 20th, and already people call and say, I see the change. I see you doing work. If people call me and say they're having an issue on their block, I get in my car. I don't drive. I get in somebody's car from my staff, and I go to their homes, and they're not used to having somebody who is Johnny on the spot, who answers their call, who answers their texts. I don't turn people away because I know how that feels. I know what it feels like to be a voiceless black mother in the city of Chicago. And so that feeling that I had, which is terrible, I would never want people in my community to feel that way. And so this is our community. They're my constituents, and so I owe them the honor and respect to do right by them. And sometimes that's not easy because they're used to being disinvested in, they're used to being ignored, and not on my watch. And so I tell them for 4 years, we're married, and we got to learn to till and work that relationship. And so that's the part that I'm looking forward to, for them to be able to trust me, for them to walk through those doors and say, hey, I just want to sit down, it's hot outside. I just want a cup of coffee, or I need a sanitary napkin, or I need some deodorant. Those are the things that this office is supposed to be. These are the things that we're supposed to provide for the community. And as long as I'm in that seat, I'll do that. So I might only seem like there are 6 DSA members. A good amount of the council was either challenged or unseated. And so there's a different type of temperature in the city council. And so before I got to city council, I had cussed out half of my coworkers because I was an organizer. So to see me on the other side of the table is different from them. And it does 2 things. It humbles them, because you don't have to have that seat. And number 2, it makes them see that Chicago is tired of the same old, same old. And you see that around the country with people getting tired of the status quo, if that's what you want to say. And so it's organizing that body. It's 50 people. You need about 36 votes. The 6 of us, which is really, they're more, they might not necessarily be DSA members, but they are more socialists and leftists on the council than we think. And it's pushing the issue and really having a conversation about, hey, in your community, you get to pave the streets 3 and 4 times in the 4 years. In my community, I got to pick, because my community is huge and so big. And so it's kind of in its own way shaming my coworkers to say, you live where quality schools, you can walk to a quality school, you can walk to a quality grocery store, you don't have to worry about being robbed, you can work in your own community. Why is that okay for you and not okay for me and my constituents? And so it's having those hard conversations, and that's real. People do not want to talk about racism and capitalism, but we have to in order to change what happens in this country. So during the election, there was a young lady who was my deputy director. Her name was Robin Peters. She was a DSA member, and the Democratic Socialists of America in Chicago had worked on a big campaign called rent control, because we do have bad business owners in the community and we have bad landlords. And so rent control talks about you not being able to raise the rent until you make some changes in somebody's apartment. And so when she became my deputy director on my campaign, I was asked to talk to DSA about an endorsement. And so what I said to DSA was, historically, we have people who speak up for us but don't walk with us. And so I want us to be in a space where you actually have the people who are impacted by bad policies walking hand in hand with you. And so they asked me to become a member, and I became one. So in our communities, we do have a lot of vacant homes and vacant buildings. And part of it is because of the housing crisis. But the other part is people who've been in charge. So Richard Daley, Rahm Emanuel, privatizing all of the services in the city. And so everyday people who would be in the public sector, who would cut grass, who would work in the lunchrooms at the schools, who would clean up the schools, all of those jobs were siphoned off and given to private entities. And then what they do is hire low-wage workers, and they don't provide the means to support people in the community. And so there is no secret that 20,000 black folks have left the city in the last 5 or 6 years. There is no secret as why our communities are deserts or they're deserted. And it's because you can't afford to live in Chicago. This is one of the richest cities in the country. And we got homeless people who lay up under the expressway. That's not bad constituency, that's bad government. Those are bad players. And so now we have an opportunity while we're pushing the conversation to the left to say we can no longer have big I's and little U's. Chicago is the tale of two cities. When you go downtown, it's beautiful, it's clean. You walk from corner to corner, there are millions of stores, the services are great. You get past Cermak, it's a desert. You go on the west side, going past Ashland on the west side, you see absolutely nothing. It's manufactured misery. And our elected officials have played the biggest part. We had a Republican governor, Governor Rauner, who gutted out people who had home daycare businesses. He took more money out of the public sector and put it in the private. They made their friends rich off the backs of low income and working families. And so now we have an opportunity to change that. We push the conversation to the left, but we got more work to do. And in this time, we're smart enough to have people who are in the state, who are in the county, and who are in the city, who all work together and who all have the same beliefs. And so with that type of work happening in one state, and so Illinois is one of those, Chicago is the most segregated city in the world. It just is. And so now we have an opportunity to create the space to say, if that's how people choose to live, we still provide the services. And so I'm looking forward to that work. I haven't called my first ordinance yet, but I plan to in the July meeting. So I'm excited about that. And I'm just excited to be in a space where everyday regular people get to make decisions about their lives. So I'm excited about the position that I'm in, but I'm also excited to know what other countries do. Finland has a saying that says you get the school ready for the child and not the child ready for the school. And so when other countries do things well, United States needs to be looking at it. We need to make sure that we're implementing the things that help everybody. There's a reason why certain cities don't have crime. There's a certain reason why certain cities don't have homelessness. And because they've worked it and figured it out for everybody. And so Chicago is getting to that place. We got a long way to go in the United States, but it's a long time coming. And in the words of Martin Luther King, one day we shall overcome.